This episode is sponsored by Zenro Clothing Co. Pick up your tees and or accessories at zenroclothingco.com and be sure to use offer code Socrates at checkout for 20% off select items. Also, if you're not into spending the money, just check out the Zenro radio playlist. zenroclothingco.com, music for your everyday. This episode also sponsored by The Pointian Bakery. If you're located in the Pointian area of Scarborough, Toronto, be sure to check out The Pointian Bakery, say what's up to Arville, and pick up a donut or two. Baked daily, crafted with love. This episode also sponsored by Podbean. Podbean is the podcasting platform of choice. It's the one that me and Vish use, and is great, you know, if you're looking to start that DIY podcast yourself. Definitely check out Podbean. Use the link podbean.com/SocraticGamers and gain 1 month of unlimited podcasting for free. Test it out, build that content. Anyone could podcast, right, Vish?
Yep.
Start a podcast and get your ideas out there. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, cool. Okay, this is just rude. We were trying for we've been on for actually almost half an hour now trying to fix this tech issue, and I feel like planned obsolescence is real, man. Like, why is this thing just not working? It's still got all the processors, but you have these apps, I guess, that are just not congruent with what you need tech wise. Like, do you think this is like planned obsolescence, or do you think this is just like unlucky coincidence that my computer's crapping out on me now? Because you've had your computer for a long time, and I'm like, why is yours still fine? How come mine is not working? It's like an Apple thing, because Apple's like, okay, you need the newest,
no,
whatever.
I don't. Not necessarily. I think it's just that because Windows probably has a more wider range of parts that it has to work with.
Okay. Yeah.
Just have to cover more things, but it's also it could be different things because it's a CPU thing, right? It's able to keep things cool to running. Maybe it's running hot, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that it's just everything is just slowing down on this computer. But anyways, this is actually a great segue into the main topic. We don't have too much time, so we're going to keep it kind of short. But this is actually a great segue into what I wanted to talk about this week. Is there anything pressing that you're like, oh, dude, this is super cool?
Don't think so. I don't remember.
Okay. So then I'll jump into this thing. So oil. We were talking about it last week or 2 weeks ago because we took last week off. But I don't know if we got into. I'm not sure if this was a conversation post podcast or not, or if we talked about it. But if you look into, what's driving the most exports for Canada, I'm pretty sure we said this, it's oil, right? And if you add up all those things that are just breakups of the oil, so it's petro, whatever, crude oil, whatever. If you add up all the oil brackets, it makes up the majority of everything we're shipping out. Okay. And with that, I thought it was really interesting because when I was in business school, the thing that they told us was textiles was the most exported thing. So they're telling us all it's textiles, and we're which is cloths, material, stuff like that. Yeah. Clothes, yeah. And then looking into it yourself, you're like, wait a minute, it's oil. And then I was hanging out with this person yesterday, business degree as well. We were talking about marketing, and I was like, isn't it kind of weird if you just look at the exports for Canada, it's oil? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, but they have a weird stance on climate change where it's anti-climate change. So it's a little hypocritical. And he's like, yeah, that is actually so true. It's we don't think about it. Even him as a business person, right? We'd understand, economies and stuff. But you never really think about it to that degree. Okay.
Sure.
Right? Just the average person's not really thinking about what this all means. So I just watched Stephen Greer's latest documentary called The Lost Century. And it's everything we talked about. So this whole thing about UAPs, if you listen to old podcasts about UAPs and stuff, you'll see that it's if you can create this alternate energy source, you could literally change the way economies, the way the world is, if you had infinite energy, right? And with that, you if you if you produce this infinite energy source, you automatically destroy all of the power structures because our entire economy is built off oil,
Hmm.
right? Because like, all right, think about all of these like things that we're thinking about, which are okay, oil is um running our entire economy. Okay, oil is also connected to climate change. Why do the Saudis have all the money? Oh, because it's oil. And then we're like, okay, this UAP thing, sure, it's about aliens, but like it's really more than about aliens, it's about technology. It's like, what kind of technology are they using? And then we even talked about world peace, you and I, where it's like, okay, will there ever be world peace? It's like, no, because of scarcity. There's not enough resources. So if there's like one bed and you and I are there, and like who's gonna sleep on the bed, but
Hmm.
it's not enough for two people, it's like we're gonna be fighting over it, right?
Sure.
You agree, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
if you give people infinite resources, you can create world peace because that's the only reason why you're fighting. Like if you look
Hmm.
at wars, right? It's like, oh, I want to be on that land. Oh, I want this money. I want this power structure,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But if they release what they know about UAPs and the technology, this could all go away. And the craziest part is that they've been sleeping on this technology for like centuries, not centuries, decades. So allegedly, it's like during the 1960s, they introduced this like patent that was, it's like like, um, it's like this patent law where if you release any patent and it goes against national security, then they have the right to stifle that patent. Okay. And this is being talked about right now in like a couple days ago. You know, Patrick Bet David, the
Yeah, yeah,
business
yeah.
dude. Yeah, yeah. So
Sure.
he had Stephen Greer on, and then I was like, okay, well, if you're listening to him, like there must be something to it, right? And Patrick Bet David in the past has talked about like oil conglomerates like owning the media and all that stuff. And then like he was talking about the patent thing, the national secrecy patent that he didn't even hear about until he saw his documentary and then he looked into it and he's like, oh, it's a real thing. But
Hmm.
like national security is considered things that go against your economy too. So if you're making a lot of money off like weapons and like energy systems like oil, if you create something that goes away with those, they have the right to like stifle you.
Hmm.
So what do you think about all that? Like now, because I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I'm like, okay, am I just making connections where it's like, okay, that kind of seems like it, but you're like drawing conclusions that are not really there, or do you see it also in that like sphere? You're like, oh yes,
Yeah, no,
this
no,
makes
I've
sense.
heard of things like that. Yeah, sure, but we don't know if those other technologies exist.
Okay,
That's the only thing,
so
right?
this is the crazy part. This is the crazy part. So he recently, Stephen Greer, he recently released a website that you can go to where he just dumped all the information. I haven't looked into it because I'm like, I don't care that much. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. Like, I'm sure you'd find it interesting, but it's literally a website where you can go in and you just look at like all of the UFO declassified stuff and some secret stuff that he had in his possession. And he's just like, I'm just going to dump it on the web.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole mandate right now is if you figure out a way, an alternate fuel source, instead of applying for a patent, just release the schematics online.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you release it online, other people can use it. But if you're trying to go through the patent process because of this law, they can stifle your invention. And he says that that's what happened with Nikola Tesla and all them. Because like Nikola Tesla came up with free energy before like he tapped into an ancient technology, which is this is getting crazy, where it's like you have like electricity flowing throughout the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
He invented something like that. Do you remember that movie? Like they showed it a little bit. Christopher Nolan showed it in
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, right.
You remember? Oh, what's
Yeah,
that called?
it's I
You
watched
know,
it.
it's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
on
yeah.
my tongue, bro.
Invention, not invention.
It was like two magicians, and they were just
Yeah.
going back to back, and then they showed Tesla as a part of it, and he
Mm-hmm.
created like cloning or something like that, and that's how he was like pulling off these
Yes.
tricks.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
spoiler alert, but the movie's really old. Um, Well, that's gonna kill me. I forgot. But yeah, so I
Yeah, I can
swear
find
that
the name,
all
but
right,
yeah,
you
yeah.
find
Go
it, you find it, you find it.
ahead.
So I swear that Christopher Nolan knows all this, man. Like everything. So Stephen Greer was
Mm-hmm.
talking about how this again, this lines up with quantum physics. So you know
The
quantum
Prestige.
entanglement. The Prestige. I was like, it's a P though. Yeah, Prestige. So go watch that movie. It's crazy. So Tesla's in that.
Hmm.
And I really think that Christopher Nolan is really tapped into all this stuff because all of his movies are actually talking about like all of this stuff.
Hmm.
So okay, with the Prestige, you talk about Tesla, and with the one that got me reading about JFK was the Oppenheimer movie. But Oppenheimer's also when they started the UFO Secrecy Act, like in line with the nukes. And then Interstellar. So
Hmm.
Stephen Greer was like, teleportation's real and we're able to do it. And it's like, okay, how does it work? It's through the quantum entanglement. Remember how it was like they're saying like one atom here and then another atom here. If you move one, they're both going to move at the same time, right? Because they're like connected or entangled. Okay. So what he's saying is like you would just like utilize that by jumping to that other atom in like space time.
Hmm.
Sounds really ridiculous. But then when he's like, basically what it is, like if you travel at the speed of light, it's actually impossible to make it to the other side of the universe, right? Because it's like thousands of years, whatever, whatever. So he's like, I don't have a piece of paper, but if you draw a dot on the paper and then you fold that paper and then you punch that, and I was like, this is Interstellar, bro,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, Christopher Nolan, what do you know, bro? Are you, and then he's talking about time, Christopher Nolan with the Tenet.
Hmm.
This, like, honestly, it sounds like some crazy conspiracy stuff, but like, what do you think? You see in the connections, right? It's like you're talking about all the things that, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he used real stuff, right? Like on Interstellar was a real physics person to make it as real as possible, right? All the things. The only thing that was not sure of was what happens inside of a black hole. That was the main thing.
right, 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 because that's the point of no return, totally. So, so in researching all this stuff, because okay, and also I'm getting into Billy Carson, who he was talking about like the ancient alien stuff and how a lot of what Star Wars is literally from the Sumerian text. And he's like, he, what's his name? Uh, who's the dude who made Star Wars? George Lucas
George
must have
Lucas.
like, yeah, he must have been tapped in, right,
Hmm.
to whatever's going on because he must have done some like pre-reading. And then if you look at Steven Spielberg, apparently like Close Encounters movie is like it's all based on UFO fact. So it's like, are these people, because you said, oh, they do a lot of research. So when you're doing the research, are they realizing what's actually going on and they're presenting it to us in film form? You know what I'm saying? To make it like, and then like 20 years
Yeah.
down the line, you're like, oh, actually, that all that movie stuff was real. And you're
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. Maybe, or do you
I
think it's just like
don't
great fantasies?
know. It could be, but they could use real elements or real people's stories, part of their thing, because this is a good story to tell, right? They're just
True.
they're good at
Oh
that
yeah,
stuff,
okay.
right?
Right, 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 right. So they're like looking at like old school stories and being like, oh, this would be a great one to like revamp and retell.
Hmm.
So you really don't think that anyone's like sending us any messages?
Like a person.
No, 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 like them. Like, all right, so Tom DeLonge, he was like the reason why he got into the CIA because you're like, oh, well, he's a rock star. Well, how could he possibly? Oh, dude, I read a book called In Plain Sight, and it's mostly about Tom DeLonge's like frickin' I didn't even know about this,
Mm.
but he started to the Stars Academy, and in the book they explain how it started and the credibility because he had like all these CIA members, and he had like there's like leaked emails between him and Clinton campaign about talking about UAPs and stuff. So it
Hmm.
goes into all that. But like Tom DeLonge's rationale for getting in with the CIA was that he could present in movie form all of these truths. And then by the time it got to the main public, then like a few years later, you're like, oh yeah, actually that's real. So
Hmm.
it's like the ease of the psyche into um like what's really going on is through storytelling. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, is he the one who overtly said it? He's like, oh, if I just make it cool, then people will understand it. Whereas, like, people like Spielberg, George Lucas, Christopher Nolan, they knew it inherently, but they didn't like, they didn't explicitly state like, oh, we're actually just gonna
Sure. Yeah,
teach
yeah. I mean, yeah.
people. You know
If
what
you
I'm
think,
saying?
yeah, if they did do that, I mean, maybe they'd be treated like Tom DeLonge.
Well, yeah, where you're like crazy or something,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But then the weird part now is like,
But then maybe there's, I don't know, like it's part of the whole, what's sane, what's not sane, right? Like
hmm,
this is the time that we're in. These are the buttons that we can push to the point that
yeah,
without getting any repercussions, kind of thing.
yes, yeah, totally, totally, totally. Yes, yes. So like Tom's too novice in it. Like all these film people are like, hey man, you can tell the truth, but like don't tell them where it's coming from. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like whereas Tom's like, no, it's about aliens, bro. Like it's almost like if you give people too much information too quickly, they think you're like crazy. But it's like, no, you just gotta draw the line to like here to here to here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Okay, I don't know if you see this is like because I'm like trying to like I'm like having conversations similar to this, but like with other people, and I'm like, I probably sound crazy because it's like you didn't make the leap. You didn't draw the
sure, sure.
line
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to like this thing, right? So Billy Carson, I don't know if you've looked into him at all.
Not yet. No.
Okay, okay. I'm really interested in your perspective because his idea of the cargo cult makes total sense.
What's that?
Okay, okay. Yeah, bro. All right, check this out. Check this out. Check this out. It's crazy. So, um, during World War II, these fighter pilots, they went to these indigenous lands and they gave them food, right? And then when they came back to like, oh, how are these indigenous people doing? They saw like monuments erected to these people and they were praying for spam. They were like creating runways for them. They
Mm-hmm.
were they're erecting like statues of like what they saw. And what he said is, I think religion is a cargo cult. So we in the past have been visited by these extraterrestrial beings. And or maybe like they did bioengineer us, we don't really know. But he's saying that all of the tales, if you just switch like angel for
Sure.
alien or
Mm-hmm.
UFO, Anunnaki, it actually all makes sense. It's like, why did they like what is this heaven that they came from?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, oh, God came from the heavens. There was this giant war in the heavens. It's like, are they just watching like a galactic battle happen? And they're like, oh, dude, like all the like then the
Sure.
indigenous people,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like, oh, this is what's happening, and like whatever. Cause he goes through this is why I want you to look into it because it's crazy. So like he goes into all the ancient religions and how they were talking about like sky people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's a wild, and this is what to me, I was like, oh, you're onto something. And a lot of people are like, he's onto something. Okay, let's backtrack first though. How do you make your money? Because for him, because are you making this money off this? He's making some money off this, but he's had businesses before that he sold, and he's like a multimillionaire who's doing this out of passion, just like Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy Corbell makes no money off UFO stuff. He has like properties, and then those properties like fund his lifestyle so that he can like research this. I think it's important to say because like if you're making money off like some
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
nefarious means, and you're like, okay, this is not genuine, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, okay, so what was the last thing I said about Billy Carson, cargo cults? Um, I went to a segue and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
let me
yeah,
just
yeah.
get
You're
back.
talking about his business or how he made money. Then before that was.
I guess all right, just cargo cults. If you look at these yeah, oh wait, I remember what I was gonna say. So I thought it was kind of weird
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of ancient civilizations were saying that these sky people came and they like or gods who gave them knowledge, technology, because the Sumerians, right? The first ever civilization. Do you remember we met like Graham Hancock?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then he's like, oh, you should read the book History Begins in Sumer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, oh, where'd you buy the book? And then so I bought the book, I read the book, and it's like everything we do from mathematics to like laws, money, um, like all this stuff, like the way we structure society is quite Sumerian. So you know that we've been doing the same thing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why it's interesting is Sumerian or Sumer was the first civilization, but they don't know where it came from. It's not like,
Right.
when you're like building like a house, you're like, okay, this to this to this to this. It's like it's a logical progression. They're just like they appeared out of nowhere and then
Mm-hmm.
it's our first civilization. So it's like the giant mystery.
Sure.
Okay. But what the Sumerians said is the Anunnaki taught us, aka people not of this earth.
Hmm.
Anunnaki comes from Sumerian text. This is all logically making sense now, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So if you are an if no, he said it like this, if you are us, okay, and you progress enough through science, you're gonna realize that our star is going to burn out. So you naturally have to leave this galaxy
Hmm.
in search of other hospitable lands. So they found Earth and there was Homo sapiens, not like sorry, not Homo sapiens, Homo erectus around. And they're just like, oh yeah, they're just like animals. Don't worry about them, you know? And then they were starting to build a lot of these structures and like had all this knowledge. And then they're like, wait a minute, why don't we just utilize them by bioengineering them a bit so that they can work for us? And then they created Homo sapiens. And but we were confused because we didn't know that what they were showing us was technology, but to us it was magic.
Hmm.
So that's why he created all these stories of these like sky gods who like can do all these amazing things. But it's like, no, it's literally technology, bro. What do you think about that? Then that's the cargo cult thing when you said like World War
Hmm.
II. So yeah, viable, not viable.
I mean, how do you know that's viable? Where do we get that
No, no,
information from?
logic. I'm just saying, just use it as a logic puzzle because it's like, okay, we don't know how he got to here. Because, all right, so my first question is this: how come everybody, 90% of the world believes in God or like a religion? Well, let's not say 90, that's quite high, but like let's say 80% believe in
Or
some
have
sort of
yes, have
deity.
some sort of thing. But deity, there's different meanings to it. It's not always the same. Now, because the reason is
Okay.
the world has been populated by the colonizers, right? The
Hmm.
influence of the colonizer has that's what's left behind, thinking that they were all gods.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking they were all gods.
But that's not what their own culture would say.
Okay.
Their own culture wouldn't use the word God. That's an English word, right?
So that's his point. He's saying that it's not gods, it's Anunnaki,
Mm-hmm.
like other beings with
Yeah, 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 yeah.
intelligence. I don't know if you've seen those posts that I've made where it's like, where I reposted it, where it's like, if you showed this to a caveman today, and then I was like, oh yeah, they would think it's a god. Where it's just an LCD screen with like a dude going off,
Mm-hmm.
like fire coming out of his eyes, and you're like, oh dude.
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
you
yeah.
saw that as somebody that had no idea what that thing was, you would think it was a god.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he's saying with the cargo cults, if you just logically look at it, it actually makes total sense. And here's the kicker. The reason why I was like giving this more like it's one thing to be like, this makes sense. And like it's interesting. Let me look into this. And it's another to have somebody independently of this thing tell you a similar thing. So there's somebody that I know, and I was like, I just like mentioned UFOs to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we all knew this." So they're from Bermuda, Barbados, so some there. So like one of those like islandy countries.
Mm-hmm.
They're originally from there, and I was like, yeah, like I don't know if you're looking at this UAP stuff. Like I'm hearing that they might be like sky people, whatever, whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, in our culture we knew this already. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, in our culture, they said that people from space came and taught us what we know. And this dude's African.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, so here's another crazy thing. In Africa, there's a tribe called the Dogon tribe
Mm-hmm.
where they believe that they are from Mars and they were taught all these things. This is in their friggin'
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
lore
Mm-hmm.
that they're from Mars and they were taught all these things. And when scientists went there, they're like, how do you know the exact like roughly the same size and the exact order of our planets? But you can't see that at night. And then they're like, oh, we're from this Palladian star system. And they're like, well, what is this thing? And they looked with the telescope and they're like, how did you know the exact structure of the Palladian star system?
Mm-hmm.
So either the skies are so clear that you can see it, but they said the scientists were like, the like it's so far, you need a telescope.
Mm-hmm.
but they got like the general design correct. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know.
Interesting. You're just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
That's
How
sort
is
of
that happening? Yeah, yeah,
that's where I'm at right now. I'm
yeah.
like, I'm doing deep dives because I'm like, how the hell is this making sense? And what Billy Carson was saying, he's been to all these. So this is how it all started, and this is how it started for me too. His mom on her deathbed was like, okay, so he saw an alien when he was a kid, but like, or a UFO, and his mom's like, yeah, there was an ancient sky people that, same story as that dude that I know. And he was like, yeah, whatever. Well, no, he started looking into it. He's like, oh, this is actually making no sense because no plane looks like what I saw in the sky, whatever. But I'm like, you're a kid. You don't know anything. So when his mom was dying, she's like, you should visit these ancient sites because they're like beautiful, whatever. So he went to Machu Picchu first.
Hmm.
I went to Machu Picchu. Then he's like, hey, what's going on here? And then the locals tell you stories, and you're like, wait, what? So because he has so much money, he started flying out to the ancient sites similar to what I did and listening to the stories of all the people telling them. So he's like, my knowledge isn't coming from like mainstream academia. I'm listening to the people that have like ancestral knowledge,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And we call it like, oh, it's just a myth. It's just like something that's not real. But okay, let's just hold it as if it's just some sort of knowledge. And what he said was if you build enough circumstantial evidence, you can convict somebody in America. So what he's doing is he's just building all the circumstantial evidence and he's like, why is this all making sense?
Hmm.
Even for me, I'm like you were like, that's interesting. I don't know if it's real, but that's very interesting,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know? So it's like we need one of those debates like Joe Rogan. I don't know if you saw the Terrence Howard and
I've
or
seen most of it. I haven't finished it.
is great, man, because he didn't rip them apart. He was like, he like told them where he's wrong.
Hmm.
And then at the end of that thing, when you get to the end, he like offers to help mentor him. He's like, yeah, I'll just like, you're onto something. I will give you my expertise. And I was like, that's what we need. We need people to just merge together even with the Graham Hancock and the archaeologists, it's like
Yeah,
they're helping each other. And it's like that's what we need, bro. We need to bring people like Joe Rogan. What you're doing right now is the greatest thing for humanity. Taking two polar opposites, bring them together. Like, what do you know? What do I know?
yeah. Hmm.
Let's try and figure this out together.
Yeah,
So what do you think?
yeah. I agree
You
with
think
that.
there's you think there's legs though, right? Like with the Billy Carson thing, he was also on Joe Rogan, and I'm just
No, no,
like,
no. There's nothing wrong with the with Billy Carson thing because that's like even like the human migration story, right? I remember these things,
yes,
and she was
yes,
the one like, look, you have to listen to what is their story. They're saying that they came from the West or whatever it is. That like that was part of their trend. What do you call it? Immigration, whatever it was, like the
yeah,
whole.
yeah,
But like that's it's got to come from the local people, right? They have their
exactly.
stories, they have their records of their thing. Because I mean, since the colonizing thing, there's a lot of things that have been changed, right? I think we even mentioned
Exactly.
those things, right?
Yeah.
A lot of words that are not in those cultures are being used that are the English translations of them or the close translations, thinking that this is what it means, right? Even the word
Yes.
God is now used everywhere, but it's not actually the word for all cultures because there's different meanings to God,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Totally.
Abrahamic one is like a one being, but like other ones there is no God. It's just like these were humans that were extraordinary.
Yes. 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 Totally. Exactly. Exactly. It's like you would think that Elon Musk is a god,
Hmm.
and you're like, no, he's just really smart. But that's like the translation we got
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
through it.
exactly. Yeah.
You're okay. And what the all right? So this ties in. I said this before, but like if you look into Hindu scriptures and stuff, like people who are like, oh, this New Age science and like it's based off yoga. I'm like, no, it's based off Carl Jung. If you think that the New Age is about like yoga and stuff, research Carl Jung. He's the one who made like higher self, all that stuff, like consciousness, like the capital S self, and all that stuff. Because how do how do Hindu how do like oh what do you speak?
Oh,
Hindi.
what?
It's not Hindi. How do Hindi speaking people come to the West and automatically have words like consciousness, self? It made no sense to me. I was like, wait, you wouldn't know those words. You'd
Hmm.
have your own Sanskrit word or like Hindi word
Sure. Yeah,
that
yeah,
you can't translate, you know?
yeah, yeah.
And then when I was
There's
reading
no
in Carl
direct
Jung,
word to translate. Right? It'll be
yeah,
like this is the closest to it. Yeah.
right. So then if you look at Carl Jung, you're like, wait, all of the words that these like yogis got came from Carl Jung. Okay, so how much more did he influence their
Mm-hmm.
thought? It's like so much gets muddied in this thing that it's like we need to just look at the base thing, which is again what he's doing. Billy Carson, he looks at the tablet itself. So all of this stuff about the Anunnaki, whatever, it's on clay tablets. In the Egyptian lore,
Mm-hmm.
it's on tablets. So he's like, why don't we just look at the but like the historians of today are like, oh, those are just myth. And he was like, these people that spend a lot of time like writing clay tablets out,
Yeah.
they've built these giant pyramids. They just woke up one morning, they're like, I'm gonna write some fan fiction. That makes no sense.
Well,
They're
I don't.
very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
meticulous
Right, right,
about
right.
writing things down. They're like, okay, this is what we did day to day. Okay, this is what it is. Like they're very like when I went to Egypt, they're like the scribe is the most important job because they have to record everything that the pharaoh did.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the only literate one, so they can write it down. So the scribe is writing fiction. He's just like, oh, let me just talk about some like fake gods that it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
What didn't they write about what they knew? They're like, okay, these people from the sky came, gave us some technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we are doing the same thing. That's what he's saying. He's like, it's not even a leap. Why are we going to Mars? Because
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
right. It's honestly like I really think that 2024, I was saying like before that 2024 is gonna be the year of truth. And it's just so many bombshells are just happening with this like UAP stuff and like the way we live our lives. Even nutrition now is like becoming like we're becoming so illuminated with the internet. And we
Mm-hmm.
did not have this before.
Exactly. Yeah, the power is the back end to the people. I would say.
Yes.
I was watching these. I was watching. I watched Beverly Hills, the new one, and I watched the old ones,
What Beverly Hills?
the Eddie Murphy movies. Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, dude. Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah.
So I watched the new one and I watched the old one. Just like the technology, like you could just say anything and people would believe you,
Exactly.
right? There was
Exactly.
nothing, no way to prove. Like he was watching some heist happen, or and then it's like for today's time, you'd have a phone to take photos, but
Yeah.
that in 1984, it was like
Didn't have that.
you just have to say
Yeah.
it, right? But like, how do you know if that's actually true?
This is so interesting that you said that because Billy Carson, the thing, if you listen to his podcast, all he says is, I have the receipts. And he's like, in this new age, like with technology, if you don't come with your receipts, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like he has photos of it. He has like, here's a link to text. You can, like he was even explaining, you can read this stuff online for free yourself. He's like, don't even trust me on my word. I'm hoping that by listening to this podcast, you look into it for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
you draw your own conclusions because it's pretty staggering, you know? Like
Sure.
what one thing with the pyramid, I know we're about to end, but one thing with the pyramid is he was saying that every block is it's not like every block's identical and you just put them together. Because you need to make a perfect pyramid, you have to make every single block unique. So
Mm-hmm.
how the and what he was saying was you don't just do this once and you're like, hey, I hope it works. You would have to have known that this works in order to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Because else you're wasting manpower,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So he's like, so if you can't even see if you can't see on Earth how these things like led up to it, it's making more sense that the Egyptians said, we learned this from sky people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's like, yeah, where else did you we don't see anywhere on Earth that shows like how you got to this position. But there were, if you go to Egypt, they show you like recreations of it. So the pyramid,
Yeah, I was about to
other
ask you about that
yeah.
one. Yeah.
So the pharaohs, the pharaohs that came after, they tried to replicate the pyramid, and there's a thing called like a bent pyramid because the architects that came after this pyramid, they tried to mimic it and they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
get it correct.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a bunch of like weird looking pyramids, and they're like, yeah, this was their attempt to recreate this.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so you didn't pass that knowledge down. Like, wouldn't it have just gotten better over time? Unless the story's true and they came, they taught you. There's actually more to the story. Like a war happened and on Earth, whatever, whatever. And that's why but I can't get into it now. It's just, it'll be too long.
Hmm.
But just go listen to him. He explains it all the time about like why this idea of Moses leaving Egypt, he didn't actually leave Egypt. Like there was no Moses that left Egypt. There was like a battle and they took the energy source, aka the Holy Grail, from the pyramid. And then he was like, well, so basically his two brothers, they're fighting, and then he's like, I'm mad at you, but there's like a war. And then he took their, let's call it a nuclear reactor. He took that thing
Hmm.
and then ran away with it. And they're like, oh, we need to chase them down because where's our power going to come from it now?
Right.
So it's like that actually kind of makes sense too. And like he builds in other lore. And he's when you look at it as like, if you look at it as one religion, you're like, okay, it's going to be just this thing. Like
Hmm.
this is the story, right? But if you look at multiple religions, you're like, wait, why is this story just like this story? And they're like, okay, well, there's an expanded version in this story. Let me bring that in from this story. And then you get a holistic picture.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like that's how he built his Anunnaki war story that happened here on Earth. Um, but yeah, it's just like there's so much right in front of us that we can't see, and we're being like played. Like even on the level of just climate change.
Hmm.
Okay, let's stop climate change. Totally cool. Yeah, let's get rid of it. Oh, you can't get rid of it because that's the majority of my economy's money. Okay, so that's incorrect. So it's like even on that level, you're like, I'm being played,
Hmm.
you know? So what else am I being played on? That's the new quest I'm on right now, which is like, well, what are these things you guys are saying with this UAP stuff?
Right.
Yeah. You were gonna say something or
Yeah. No, I think that maybe nobody knows. I don't think it's necessarily being played. It's just
no,
if
but the power structure, if the people at the top, they're like, well, if I give you this free energy source, how can I rule you? Because what happens to your economic, like, let's say you take out oil, okay? So what else do we have to export?
uh well, I don't know what the what the economy fully is made of.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
The other ones are like gold and rare earth minerals for like technology and stuff.
Hmm.
But it's like those are like smaller compared to like the oil. So it's like, what do you replace it with? And that's what Stephen Greer was saying is like, if you introduce these technologies, like you're really rewriting our power structure on Earth.
Hmm.
Because like it's not even about the technology. It's like the weapons aspect of it is just like if you give everybody free energy, like even think about
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
like right, like everything's powered by oil. Like my electricity,
Sure.
my economics, my
Yeah.
like everything. And if you make that free, like you introduce like a new energy source, they call it the 0 point energy source. Um, you you do away with poverty because like okay, let me grow some greenhouses to like make food. Okay, you need to power that. Okay, we need more oil to power that. Okay, cool. Here's a thing that's infinite energy. Build me a greenhouse. Okay, cool. Robots need to work there. Okay, put in some infinite energy into those robots. It's energy. The reason why we're not where we are futuristically or like world peace wise, it's literally just energy. Because who's going to do the labor?
Hmm.
Who's going to power the greenhouse?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, maybe eventually that's wasn't there like something that we found? Was it fission or fusion? Something to give us that kind of level of energy.
So what he was saying, yes, yes, yes. So he's saying that what they created is such a um terrible. So they already have this technology. They're sleeping on it. A lot of this tic tac stuff is like our technology, and you're like, no, how would it be our technology? He leaked audio footage, audio recordings of them testing out. Actually, no, there's a video in his new documentary. He leaked the video of them test piloting it,
Hmm.
like a literal tic tac, just like moving. And he's like, that's infinite energy source. So you're just not letting us like know about this stuff because
Yeah, I
oh
mean, I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
I get that, I get that. But even if that is so, there's things like on scale, things can work in a certain controlled way. Can
Yeah,
you
right, yeah.
distribute the energy through scale? That's a different thing.
Is that no, but then no, totally, totally, totally. But then here comes the other thing, the patent thing he said, which is like uh that goes against national security. There's literally something that they introduced so that they can stifle any invention moving in that direction. So it's like, yeah, you're right, scale, but we need our best scientists on this to figure out how to make this even better.
Hmm.
But because of these patent laws, you're not allowed to do it. So
I,
this
I don't
came
know if
out,
it's necessarily that. I
yeah.
mean, energy has changed. We've always kept evolving on where the energy source was coming from, right?
No, totally, totally. But
Right.
he's saying that they already have the 0 point energy
Y-
technology. That's what's
I,
moving these tic tacs.
yeah, yeah, I understand what he's saying. I'm
Okay.
saying like, it could be like scale issue. Like, can you do this to a scale level?
No, no,
That
for sure. No, no, but we don't
right?
know until we have our scientists looking into it. But they are keeping that hidden. Nobody, who knows
Yeah,
about zero
I
point
understand
energy?
that what you're saying. But
Yeah.
most of the things that we got came from military.
Right. But the reason why they're not releasing this is because it's a game changer. Because you don't have no, because like yeah, the technologies that we get from military are still dependent on oil. Because they
So there's
require
yeah,
electricity.
there. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's different things. It depends on. So as if U.S. is the one that has the information,
Yeah.
right? They're going to control that information, so they have some power. So there was an issue like in the 1970s. There was like an oil embargo thing, right? That's
Okay.
why the whole petrodollar happened.
Okay.
Was to make they made a deal with Saudi Arabia because
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia shut if they shut things down, it affected the economy, the world economy. That was in the 1970s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if these are things that are in the technology that U.S. has, these are things that they have control over, right? To have
Yeah.
what do you, like power or energy, um, like control.
Yeah. No, no, for sure, for sure. But it's still related to oil. So it's not just energy, but money. So it's like if the reserve currency of the world is the American dollar, that puts them at the top.
Hmm.
So why would you release something that could destabilize that?
These again, wouldn't there a technology of this be patented?
No, no, because you only need a tiny bit. So once you have it,
Yeah, but
it's almost like
I understand that, but it's based on the knowledge, and not anybody can just make this energy thing, right? It's who has the knowledge, who understands how this thing works,
no, no,
right?
no, for
That's
sure.
how you control that, right? Like we talk about the chips thing, right? The chips thing is they're trying in China, they're trying to make those very powerful AI chips and stuff, but the the technology is there, where Denmark is the one that makes that machine, but how you use that machine, that's a different. That's like a person that has to know how to do all that, right?
I totally agree with you. No, no, for sure, the knowledge. But what I'm saying is, how do you keep the people tethered to you monetarily?
Mm-hmm.
Because think about this. I have a car and I
Yeah,
need to buy gas. So
yeah.
there's the tether. But if you introduce something that never has to be recharged, how do you make money off that? How do you perpetually make money off that?
Mm-hmm.
That's the real issue. I think it just comes down to greed. It's not a knowledge issue. It's not like a technology like infrastructure issue. It's just literal capitalistic greed. Because how do you it's like what I said about weed. I was saying this back in university days when I was taking my course, like I was like, the only reason why weed's not legal is because you don't know how to tax it. And they're like, no, but the drug, blah, 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 it makes people psychotic, blah, 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 right? You're like, okay, sure. And then look now, they introduced a whole system of like, you have to apply for a weed license, you tax yourself on it. They created a way to make money off it. So, like, okay, you guys make it legal now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that all of this is just like, they'll release it if they could figure out how to make money off it. But it's almost like a free app. So, there's this Lose It app that I use, and they removed I bought it and I've been grandfathered in for like the lifetime membership, but they got rid of that because I was like, wait, if everyone just buys a lifetime membership, because it costs the for the price of 2 years is a lifetime membership. So I was like, let me just buy them. It makes more sense. So if everyone just kept buying that, you have no way to keep making money
Hmm.
because you just bought it one time. So
Sure.
it's like if you buy this infinite energy source and you don't need anything else but this thing, so then how else do I make money? How do I keep you on the hook?
Hmm.
Right. And I think that's the real problem here. They just don't know how to monetize it because it's so plentiful in energy. It's like, how do we monetize it and how do we restructure our global economics? Because our global economics is literally based off oil.
Hmm.
Like these are questions.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
really don't. And I think that's why it's secret.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it makes it easy just to say that it's secret. I don't know if they have it, right?
But he has videos of it. He has like people testifying to it. Like so many people, so many like government agents are like, we have this.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm like, oh, we're hitting the boiling point because he's rallying so many people in the government that have like said, like, I worked on this project. We
Right.
have it. And they're all pissed because they're like, if you want to solve the climate change, just use this technology.
Hmm.
But they're keeping it secret. So that's what his whole mission right now
Sure.
is like, and here's the coolest thing ever. I didn't I forgot to mention this. So he's actually going to because they don't really know how the schematics, right? So what he's gonna do, and this is coming off the documentary, and he said in the documentary, I was like, oh, this would be really cool. He's going to live stream 24/7 the development of zero point energy. He's gonna get a factory,
Who's doing this?
Stephen Greer,
Okay.
the guy who made the documentary, because he's like, this is the only way we're protected. Because if you live stream it, you can't see any raids happen. You can't see any like nefarious stuff.
Hmm.
You're just gonna see people working. And like if we figure it out, we develop it on live stream, then the world knows how it's done. And then we're just gonna release the information to the world.
Okay.
How crazy is that, bro? That is when I heard that, I was like, that's actually the only way you could do it. Yeah. Because he's
Hmm.
like, if you create a patent and you apply for the patent, they just use the Patent Secrecy Act and they stifle you. So he's like, all right, cool. We're just gonna make it in front of everyone and we're gonna release the schematics online for free.
Right.
Imagine if like it works. This
Hmm.
we have a whole new life. We have a whole new like world. And that's why I'm like 2024, bro. Like with backed by the internet, we're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
you're literally live streaming like that. We could all watch this. This is
True.
you put on Twitch. You're like, oh dude, this guy's working on it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, he's going on the board now. Like, what's he writing? You know? But this is the power of the internet. And this is why it's like we are in this Armageddon. Armageddon mean like the end of a different civilization,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not the
New.
end of the world.
Sure.
It's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
new
Yeah.
way of
The
thinking.
change.
Yeah, the change.
Transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas like they marketed it as the end of the world. It's like the end of the world that you knew. And it's like the Armageddon happened as soon as the internet happened.
Hmm.
Because we would not have this ability if there was no internet,
Yeah.
right? One last thing about uh power structures, because I forgot that this came up when he was explaining it. Allegedly, we had the technology. If we had stayed on course, we could have gone to the moon in the 1800s. Okay.
Okay.
Allegedly, I don't know. This is true. This is what he's saying. Billy Carson. It was the Christian Crusades. And we
Mm-hmm.
see this now. And it's like what you said about Beverly Hills. You're like, oh, you could just lie. You say whatever you want. Nobody will question it.
Mm-hmm.
So during the Christian Crusades, they literally went around destroying everything that had anything to do with polytheistic
Sure.
philosophies,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Remember like burning of Alexandria, all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So who's to say that didn't happen prior to the internet being invented? Because you're like, oh, you could just say anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite accurate. Like you could just straight up lie to people and you would never know. Like resumes, like yeah, I was CEO of five Fortune 500 companies,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
Because
would never
yeah.
know.
Yeah. The reason that works is because if the world thinks that lying is bad, let's say it's like a sinful thing, then the likelihood of someone lying is no. But if someone that doesn't believe in these things
True.
would
Or
use
there's
those
moral
tricks,
flexibility. They're like, well, I'm going to do it to get ahead, and then I'm just
yeah,
going to pray to make that sin go away.
or it just doesn't believe it, just doesn't
Or
believe
yeah,
in.
or just then you just like hack
You
everyone's like
can, yes,
right.
yeah,
But the thing is, with the internet, it's like game changer.
mm-hmm.
Can't You can't do that now. It's like I could just quickly Google it. Is this real? It's not real.
Yeah.
That's why you need receipts. That's why Billy Carson. I'm
Mm.
like, I like that he said that. Um, okay, yeah, we went a bit over time. Sorry about that, Vish.
That's okay.
But like you see it too, right? Like I'm. This is not like this is what I'm
Yeah.
for because I'm
No,
like,
no,
all right, it's making sense, bro. Because I'm like,
no,
I'm going
because
deep.
yeah, because just watching Beverly Hills is realizing how much like the lack of information that we had just because we didn't have internet back in those
Yes,
days.
dude. Yeah, it's literally just the internet. It's just
It's
like we
literally
just don't
was.
have
Yeah, like
right,
we grew up in the time that it was still evolving to where
right.
it is today, right?
So even what we had was like, this is like okay, I could still kind of lie, but
Mm.
like I don't even know how you would like the crazier part now is like AI generated images. So
Hmm.
it's like I don't know if what I'm seeing is real. That's the new disinformation
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
can
yeah.
you tell if this is real? But like that little pocket where the AI wasn't invented, it's like, yeah, you just like look at the story. Oh, they were at that concert. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like it, the internet really allowed us to disprove a lot of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Kudos to the internet. There you go. All right. Any last thoughts?
Uh, no, the internet's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it totally is. Billy Carson, man, I think you'll really like it. Just like
Yeah,
look
I've
more
seen
into his
clips. I've
stuff.
seen clips. Yeah, I seen things like what he talked about, like the in ancient India, like the temples that are there, like geometrical shapes, how they did all
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So he's been to all those, man. And
Mm.
that actually reignited me. I asked her, I'm like, hey, can we go to this ancient site? I just want to see it now. We're going to next Friday or this upcoming Friday, we're going to see petroglyphs. So what that is like it's the big I didn't even know this is a thing. I heard it at work. There's like this location in Ontario that has the most carvings, rock carvings,
Hmm.
uh, in North America. And it's in Peterborough, like 2 hours away.
Oh,
And they
wow.
turn it
Okay.
into like, yeah, it's very close. So they turn it into like a national park. So we're just gonna go up for the day and I'm gonna do the tour. I'm really interested to see if there's any like spaceship looking petroglyphs or if they talk about sky people.
Right.
That because it's run by an indigenous woman. She like talks about it and like she's like, oh, the ones who came from the heavens. I'm like, all right, just switch that to alien and we're good. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like it's here, it's like all around us and it makes total sense.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyways, till next time, take it easy, Bish.
Peace.
Bye. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all those fun things, and check out our sponsors, Zenro Clothing Co., Portian Bakery, and Podbean. Take it easy, Bish.
Peace.